Real quick, Brazil trip, October 30th through November the 8th. Make sure you come with us to Brazil. That's very, very important that you do so. That's one place that y'all say y'all would really like to go. So you can go to africandiasporanews.org/Brazil, and then you can go and sign up there. You can look at what the itinerary is. It's 2 cities, and I just want to make sure you come on that trip. Sign up now. That way you can make your payments. You got 10 months or so to make payments on it. So yeah, so it won't be all like, that's why, they offer payments. And shout out to everybody so far who have signed up. I've seen some people that have signed up for the trip. Also, once again, as always, thank you for joining us and supporting the African Diaspora News Channel app. Greatly appreciate that as well. So tonight, we're going to talk about the Black Boomers and how they got their freedom to enjoy America, but they left Gen Xers, Millennial, and Gen Z abandoned. And we're going to get into, why we're talking about that tonight. There's this one sister that really kind of broke a lot of that down. And I say, I got to interject on some of this because we need to talk about that. The Black Boomers, they are, even the white ones too, they hold the most wealth, and they left no wealth to Gen X, Millennial, or Gen Z at all. They were the generation that got to have one income in the home, and they got to send their kids to college on one income. They are the people that got to see more businesses. They are the people that lived pretty good. They don't have to have two people working in their time period. The woman could stay home and have a soft life and take care of her children. You fast forward to today, that same group that are still here, they hold the majority of the property in America. They spent all the money, squandered, the wealth of the country. That's why we trillions of dollars in debt because of that generation, to be honest with you. And so we got to talk about, in the area of us as Black people, because we were left with with nothing either. And it's not like a lot of them had these $1 million, $2 million life insurance policies. So they say, look, whenever the Lord ready for me, I got a bag to leave them, so I'm good. Nope, not that either. So let's get into that, because that's the generation that say when you're 18 years old, you got to get out of my house. That generation, right? So we got to talk about it. Now, let me say this up front. Let me say it up front. If you wasn't that kind of person, if you didn't hoard resources, if you didn't do any of those things, I'm not talking about you in particular, because I don't need you writing me no emails. But as a collective, we talk about collective, not individual. Collectively, it just things hasn't been done. It hasn't been done. And my generation got to deal with it. Probably we dealt with a lot. I'm going to say that much. We dealt with a lot. My generation. And I really, it's amazing that we're sane. All the stuff that we had to deal with. But let's get into what this sister has to talk about real quick, and so I don't waste your time. Let's get into it, ladies and gentlemen. We got to have this conversation. So let me go ahead and click this. Get started.
Have you guys ever noticed that the ones who are saying that they're FBA and the descendants of slaves who have pushed back on the Democratic Party are mainly Gen Xers? And you'll see a couple baby boomers, but they're the baby boomers that are real close proximity to us Gen Xers. And that's because baby boomers and boomers, they left us behind. The ones you've seen today in these speeches with Dr. King and talking about Jesse Jackson and all that, they do not represent the ones who were born in the 70s that lived through the crack epidemic. They don't represent us. These are the Black affluent people that left the community, thought they was too good for us, and they turned their back on us. They allowed children, because at the time when this was going on, I was 13, 14 years old. They allowed their children and their families to be taken in by CPS, drop out of schools. They didn't go in and out of juveniles. They didn't care. They left them kids, they nieces and nephews on the streets to survive and fend for themselves. Many of us was homeless, couch surfing, living in motels, sleeping in cars, parks. They didn't come get us. You would think that at least on Sunday that they would come outside and, serve the community and give us meals or sack lunches or something. They didn't do none of that. They would literally be at a church that is around the corner from where people were getting high and selling drugs at. And they would never walk around that corner to go do any outreach whatsoever. They would hop in their big black Cadillacs soon as service was over and leave. They literally would ignore children, and act like we wasn't there.
Now, a lot of what this sister's going to get into, I can speak on it because I grew up, in that era as well. Definitely a child in the 80s and, in the 90s and things like that. And our generation did not have, a whole lot. Now, did they still have some family structure when we were children? Yes. I would say I'll take Black America 80s, Black America family 90s, any day of the week. I'll take any of those decades all day long because we was a little bit more family oriented than we are now. Today, collectively, we kind of act like white people, just individualistic, just don't care about each other, like talking about, just you literally didn't turn into white people, basically. And that's the sad part that I see. But that generation, their ability to get homes, there are Black Americans right now can't even get a home, can't even get one. Everybody in the neighborhood that we grew up in, that was a part of that generation, all of them had homes, not apartments. Homes, okay? Homes, properties that they were paying for. A lot of them had good jobs that you fast forward today, a lot of Black people can't even get a good job whatsoever. That same generation, think about it, voting. That generation always voted heavily Democrat when we're saying, hey, man, the Democrat Party is not helping us. We need to make them feel it for a minute. And then, we need to sit it out. And then, we'll come back and see, hey, you want to negotiate now? And that generation, no, we got to vote. We got to vote this, and that. Why? Because the people that's running the country made them comfortable. It made them comfortable. So since they're comfortable, and when you get to that comfort stage, you don't want a disruption. Now, instead of setting things up that was set up for them prior to their generation, right? The brothers and sisters of the prior generation, they call them the silent generation. They set things up enough. They left businesses for them. They did all kinds of things for them in the midst of segregation before you even had the civil rights movement. Right? So they were set up, even though they dealt with some hell, don't get me wrong, they dealt with a lot of terrorism with these folks, but they still had more, I'm going to say, than what we have today. Even though we may have a little bit more money here and there in the bank, but the money is not the same due to inflation, hyperinflation, if you want to say that. So they got their careers, they went to work, and as children, this is in the era where moms start going to work, really going to work. And they had a thing called, what they call a latchkey kid. Latchkey kids. You remember about that latchkey kid? So basically, you go to school with your key, in your pocket, or sometimes you keep your key on your neck with a string, and you go home to an empty house, and you got to fix you a sandwich or whatever the case may be. Nobody was home. They really got that. Y'all remember latchkey kids, right? Y'all remember they talked about that? You had to go home and be at the house until your mama get home. You them 6, 7 o'clock. You by yourself from about 3 something to about that time. And that's an era that didn't have a cell phone. So you couldn't call 911 like talking about. That was a time you actually had to call the police department to come help you. Now today, you couldn't get away with some of that today because people be calling in on you about why that little kid is in that house by itself. But that was that era. That was the era of they tell them something going on. Well, figure it out. That's that era. Me and my wife was talking about that recently about how we had to grow up so fast, as children and be adults a lot quicker and couldn't really be children like talking about. And because they expected that out of you in that time period. So it's just a lot that we had to deal with on top of what she's gonna get into a little later, and I'm gonna wait to talk about that. But in the end, we wasn't left anything. Now on the white side, a lot of them aren't left with a whole lot either. Some are left with things, but a lot of them not being left with anything. So it's actually on both sides. That generation has been very, very selfish, very selfish. But let me get back to what this sister has to say.
I watched this. It's crazy how now they can hop there up on television and do all this outreach for migrants and the LGBTQ community and all these other groups when they literally left an entire generation of Black people behind. They let us get beat up by the police. The schoolhouse wasn't teaching us. Teachers was literally calling us spastics and dummies and telling us that we would never be anything. You think we could come to them and say, we're having problems at school? Could you come up here and talk to these people? Nope. Nope. If your mom was on drugs, they would say, like, ask your mama. How come your mama can't do it? And if your daddy wasn't, why can't your daddy help you? When they knew well that your dad or your mom was either in jail or on drugs. Those are the Black people you've seen. The Al Sharptons, the Jesse Jacksons, the MLKs, those kind of families. We were nothing more than a cash cow after the 80s, something that they could race bait white America with.
Now, let's talk about that, because I remember that the only one that I can say that was really doing a whole lot in the grand scheme of things was Minister Farrakhan. That's the only one I will point out. Minister Farrakhan, then of course you had people like Dr. Khalid Muhammad and people like that in the nation. I could say they really, because Minister that was his prime, 80s, 90s Minister Farrakhan. But them other ones like Al Sharpton, you remember Al Sharpton with the perm? Al Sharpton haven't really, only thing that changed with Al Sharpton was his weight. But other than that, at one point in time, Al Sharpton used to kind of have people kind of shook a little bit, but then with time, Sharpton got exposed, all his dirty dealings and all of that. Then you had Jesse Jackson and he tried to run for president and all of that. And, listen, when you all tied in with the system and the Democrats and all of that, how you can really fight for Black people? And so they would get a bag off of that. They'll threaten boycotts or whatever, the white corporations to go ahead on and give a donation to their 501c3, and then, they'd be quiet about it. And then you move on to the next corporation, the next hustle. That's what you would do. In the end, how is that helping Black people? Jesse Jackson had the Rainbow Push Coalition. He was one of the people that was pushing the minority coalition thing. Minorities this, minorities that. And in the end, those minorities did not agree with Black Americans like that. Why? Because a lot of them have, white adjacent ideologies. Some of them in their homelands, they just don't like Black people or anybody darker than them. So this was going on, and you think they didn't know that? They knew that, but it was money to be made in pushing minority coalition and definitely pushing the Democrat Party. You understand what I'm saying? We have been nothing but a lick for a whole lot of people. We have, and we've caught on to a lot of it, but unfortunately, some of us still have not caught on that we are a great lick for the Democrat Party. For power, money, etc. You know how much money they've been getting off of our name? Oh, look, I'm helping Black people, and they get a bag from the government. You understand what I'm saying? The scamming been going on. People like to put it all on the Somalis. No, it's not all of the Somalis. The greatest scammers are the white folk. And then the Black bootlicks, they're getting they cut. You understand what I'm saying? Now, let's get back to what this sister had to say here, because she's going to continue cooking.
Oh, this is what's happening to the Black community, but they were looking at it from a distance. They never once stepped in and said, oh, let's get our hands dirty. What they did is start taking away our community centers, start taking away our youth employment jobs, made it easier for us to be able to take control of our health care. The baby boomers and the boomers that are post and pre-civil rights movement, they left us behind. So they don't get to speak for us now. And this is why you're going to see a bunch of foundational Black Americans saying they do not give a about a Jesse Jackson, and that he did not have the authority to even classify us as African Americans. And who does he think he is? This is why you'll see Black people saying that we don't like Al Sharpton. He's nothing but a race bait that's gotten paid off of our pain and suffering, but has not created not one solution. This is why you'll see foundational Black Americans completely pushing back on the Democratic Party. You know, most of us had to leave the church, because even when we decided we want to clean ourselves up and go into church, they would literally make sermons to talk about us. Oh, this one, they doing this on the street. They doing this on the street. It's to where you didn't even feel comfortable walking in the Lord's house. You didn't even feel comfortable telling these people what was going on, because you knew that they would make a sermon about you and use it on Sunday.
Now, she's 100% right about that. 100% right. That generation was extremely judgmental. Now that I really look back at it, really judgmental, because if you grew up through the crack era, some of y'all in here that did grow up in the crack era, you saw how that really decimated the Black community. They really needed to like help out more with the kids back then. And they just kind of let the kids, we had a lot of gang issues going on because of all that crack era and all the money that was being made off of the crack. They didn't really step in. You had some organizations, trying to do what they do, but they were more so younger people at that time period of our age group, trying to, get the brothers off the streets, try to get the Crips and Bloods stop, killing each other, because it was horrible at one point in time. Crips and Bloods were really killing each other at one point in time. They don't do that today like they used to. It was bad. I don't even talk about South Central. It was bad. And it was all behind them drugs that we didn't even put in our own community. But I remember seeing people literally rob their own mama to get the next high of crack. Seeing people go from upstanding people just to, a crackhead on the street. It was crazy to see that. Or how, the immigrants, talking about how ICE is running up on them. Actually, ICE is actually being nice, because during the crack era, the local police would just run up on you, slam you on the car, searching you, whatever. They didn't care about your rights. And that was an era before body cams. There was no body cams. So the police could beat you, kick you, do whatever they want to do for you, and it's their word against yours. There were no body cams. At least today you got some body cam footage to maybe keep the cops in check just a little bit. But back then they can whip you and do whatever they want to do. And them white cops will be in the Black community all the time, messing with Black folk. Like, what are you even doing here? And they racist too. You look at them and tell they look like a Klansman, but yet they in the Black community. And they didn't come out and do anything about it. How is it that you got your freedom with the civil rights movement, but you didn't? Just like you got your freedom, you can go be with the white people. Now think about it. It was that generation that abandoned our Black businesses. Let's talk about it, because Gen X was kids. They abandoned their Black businesses to go be with the white people. You say, how we lost all our businesses? It was them. The Black people that kept our businesses open, they couldn't stay open because that generation validated white folks. And so they went over there with the white people, giving all the business to them, and our things closed down. That's the truth. That is the truth. That generation abandoned our community, they just had to go over there with them white folks. There ain't no way white people can be beating me up. I'm looking at stories and I'm hearing stories about the Klan doing to us, bombing our churches, burning our churches. And then when I get civil rights movement, the first thing I want to do is go over there with them. Ain't no way I want to. No. I say, okay, good. We got the civil rights movement. We got certain resources we got now. Cool. Now let's really build the Black community. Now we got more access to resources. No, they did not want to build the Black community. They wanted to go over there with white people. And has been a detrimental thing for Black America. Do you see the Chinese, when they come here, they want to just abandon Chinese businesses and run over there with white people? No. Chinese, Asians, the reason why Asians do so well in this country, because Asians stay on code. And trust me, the more and more I learn about what Asians do and Chinese and others and how they move, I say, yeah, I respect that. That's why they making more money than anybody else. How they prioritize education. Like with education, it ain't no conversation about why you're not gonna have an A. Because studies prove if you're more educated, you make more money. Period. Okay? Look at the other groups don't come in here. Look at the Indians. Do they go try to say abandon Indian businesses to go be with white people over there? I mean, everybody kind of sticks to their own community. But no, even though we went through all the hell we went through, some of that generation really wanted white validation. They wanted to be in Bloomingdale's and Macy's with the white people and Saks Fifth Avenue and all these places. Oh, I can go in here now, even though the white people didn't want you in there. Didn't want you. That's why we in the position that we're in. And we got to really talk about our position. Because as I said last night, a time gonna come when you ain't gonna be able to depend on these people. See, if we would have stayed with our black businesses and building up our own, we wouldn't be having this conversation about them laying us off, Crown Act. If you had your own, you kept your businesses, there's no such thing as a freaking Crown Act, because black people will be employing black people. When you go in their businesses, they do what they want to do. Oh, they discriminate me because I have my hair. Well, if you work for black people, you wouldn't even worry about it. They put us in that position. And we got to talk about this. And I don't care if you get mad. It's the truth. A brother like myself had to build from scratch. That's the issue. I didn't inherit anything. I had to build everything from the bottom. And every person that's Gen X, definitely millennials, Gen Z, they had to build it all from the bottom. And okay, if you're a brother or sister, Gen X, you finally doing well for yourself or whatever. And because of the loss of family, but the greatest influence, unfortunately, them folks, now you got some millennials and then your Gen Zs, trying to talk to your kids about things or whatever. You know how that goes. Y'all know how that goes, parents. Until they hit their head against the wall, then they finally want to listen to you. But they're screwed. They even screwed because the apartments they can't afford, everything that went up, everything was going up. They didn't fight nothing. They didn't say, you know what? Hey, what's up with this inflation? Hey, why gas is listen, at one point in time, gas was, I remember gas being 79, 89, and 99 cents. Like premium was 99 cents. How y'all don't, your generation, that generation, why y'all was in control of Congress and everything? How come you didn't say something when you're paying more than $1 for gas? Why didn't you say nothing back then? When the price of meat was going up and all that, why didn't y'all say anything? Y'all stayed quiet. You know why? Because y'all had money to. Y'all had money to afford it. Y'all had good jobs. Y'all had pensions. Man, if you maybe you're a police officer or something like that, you can get a pension. Maybe. But they removed the pension and put in 401k, which is tied to the market. The market have a slump. It can wipe out a lot of your money that you've been putting in on a 401k. Versus a pension, you work so many years, you got your pension. Your pension is what it is. It's not the market fluctuating and all that mess like a 401k. Yes, they got ways today, mutual funds and all that other stuff. I get it. But it's not. This conversation is not about that. I'm saying is they had pensions. They had pensions with Social Security. They got to get the full Social Security at 62 years old. Today, our generation got to go all the way to freaking 67 if you want full Social Security. 67? So if I take my Social Security at 62, then I don't get all I deserve because, listen, I'm not going to wait to 67. That's not happening. It's not happening Because if you got to depend on Social Security, then you didn't do your life right. But I want my money. So 62, I'm drawing mine. I already said that. But I should be able to get full Social Security at 62. They got to do all that. And in the midst of them having all of that, they didn't leave nothing for sure for Gen X. And if they didn't leave nothing for Gen X, then we have to work hard to try to do something for our kids who are who are Gen Zs and millennials. But my biggest issue is that they left our businesses, left our communities, what their sister said, to go over there with them white folk, and left us with no community. Didn't stand up. That generation could have stood up against the 3 strikes law, could have stood up against the Biden crime bill. That generation, and they supported it. They supported listen. Clinton and Biden had black support because they didn't want to go in the neighborhood and deal with the issues. They wanted black people locked up. You can't just put it all on white Democrats. If you're a student of history, you know you cannot put it all on white Democrats. The Congressional Black Caucus and a lot of black people wanted something done about the crime and all that was going on at the time period. Instead of saying we go intervene in our own communities and get this stuff solved, no, they wanted white people to lock us up. You understand what I'm saying? That is the truth. They were fine with us going to jail in that era. Let's go ahead and continue with this sister has to say. Because that, we got to deal with our own issues too now. It's one thing to talk about the immigrants and the white folk and all that, but we got to talk about our people and what Black America did wrong to Black America. Because if Black America would have built off the civil rights movement, that was a time to build. In the 1970s, they were partying, BSing, sleeping with white women and white men. This free love, all that free love, disco, all that. They were partying and BSing and drug using instead of building in the 1970s. Let me go ahead and get back to this sister.
These black people are so out of touch because the ones that are coming up behind us, these millennials and Gen Zers, they see that they were left behind based on their educational systems, how they've had to watch their parents struggle, even though they're working 40 to 60 hours a week. Many of their grandparents who are drug addicted still are drug addicted. Their grandparents are dealing with health issues after getting clean and sober. Yeah, they see it. They see that the affluent black community of the civil rights movement left them for dead. And if it wasn't for people like myself who were able to overcome that and survive Biden's crime bill and survive Clinton's welfare reform and survive the 3 strikes, you're outlaws, and survive the systemic oppression and the disenfranchisement of our communities, the ones who are still here, live through it, and are sane enough to talk about it, they vibe with us. They don't vibe with these baby boomers and these boomers.
Yeah, and I'm glad I looked at this comment by Cynthia and said, don't forget, many of them here in Michigan were employed by General Motors, so therefore they were able to move out into white communities and help them build up and support their tax base. Yeah, they had the factory jobs where they can get right out of high school and go work a factory job with a pension. Yeah, they had those opportunities. They sure did. Back in Port Arthur, how my family even got to Texas, because all my family is from Louisiana. My family is from, I have family in Baton Rouge, St. Martinville, Jeanerette, New Orleans, like all those places like that, Lake Charles. And how a lot of people from Louisiana moved to Port Arthur is that they was opening those plants over there in Port Arthur, those petrochemical plants. And so, my grandfathers, moved, to Port Arthur from Louisiana, And that's how you got a lot of Louisiana people moving over there to Port Arthur. So, it's still a good amount of black people in Port Arthur. And shout out to Port Arthur, Texas. But they moved for those refinery jobs at that time period. And they were paid good with pensions. And so it allowed them to buy homes and all of that. My grandmother, she worked a part-time job, like a home health, basically. And it was part-time. Then she'd come home. My grandfather was the one that's paying. I mean, he could pay all the bills off of his petrochemical job. And he worked there in Texaco, I remember. I think he did 30 some odd years, and he retired, and he had a pension, and he had his Social Security, and he collected that until he, passed on, So, it's they had way more opportunity. They had way more opportunity than we have today. Now, what should we do? Can we cry over spilled milk? No, we can't. But that generation can't really lecture us because, listen, it's one thing if you gave us something, we fumbled the bag. That's a different type of conversation. But when you didn't leave a bag, and a lot of them was going to church. Remember, Sister mentioned church. Now in the Bible, it teaches a righteous man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. So in other words, you're supposed to leave an inheritance for my parents that way, and me too. And you did not do that because you ran over there with white people and you weren't thinking about building the black community. And then you wonder, y'all have to understand, the reason why certain people have passed us up and the reason why certain people doing what they're doing is that they came into this country and they're on code. Then you got some of us that don't like each other, jealous of each other, and all of that mess. I mean, that's annoying. You're not going to support another brother because you don't like him. You're not going to support a sister because I don't want her to get no Mercedes-Benz off of my money. That's kind of things you'll say, some of you. You act like you bought one thing from them and they bought them that Mercedes-Benz they're driving or the house they're staying in. Like, please get over yourself. I mean, you didn't give them $1 million. You understand? But you had no problem going to give it to the white people. And that comes from that generation putting that mindset of white validation. It's better because it's coming from the white man. If the white man tell you that, it has authority and it's true. If a black man tell you that, don't believe it or question it. And unfortunately, that mindset is still in the black community. It is. It is. Now, a lot of black people are waking up to that. Now they're looking at them like, if they, my position, if they breathing, they lying. That's, my position. But it's bottom line. If they tell me something, I got to research it 3 different places to make sure what they say is true. I don't believe nothing they say. But I have studied their culture, so I understand what they do and who they are. I get it. But unfortunately, a lot of you have not studied their culture and don't know who they are. Just like I've told you before, it's more easier to separate a bark from a dog than to separate anti-black racism from them. Just as much as you're not shocked when a dog is barking at a car, then you shouldn't be shocked about any times they have any kind of anti-black racism. It's just part of the culture. Now, just as much you talk about the dog, you can stop the dog from barking. There's different anti-bark things you can do with a dog. It could be certain devices where you press the button and they hear it and they don't want to bark anymore. It could be certain perimeter things you do with the dogs if they go by it or whatever, or sound they won't do, certain things, maybe certain collars, anti-bark collars. The bark is there, but the infrastructure to stop the bark is what keep the bark from doing that, right? So the same thing like the dog, it's the same thing with the folks. You have to have different laws, statutes, rules to stop the anti-black racism. If you take all that away from the dog, he's barking. It's the same thing with them, right? But they got some anti-bark rules in, but they didn't finish the job. See, the next job was reparations. Okay, you got your civil rights. Now let's go get the reparations now. No, that generation was the generation that should have got reparations because they still had the family intact. they still had, yeah, I understand Dr. King was assassinated, but they still had people in the community where they could have said, hey, let's get our reparations. This country admitted what they admit we needed civil rights. Now we need redress. And they didn't do that. And so you fast forward to today, we talking about reparations in the form of cash payments. And that's why people are like, well, you ain't been through nothing. That's the first thing they say. Not to say that's a valid point, because it's not. It's not valid. But the people that should have really brought it home, and if we would have got our reparations in the form of cash payments, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation right now. But that generation probably been fine. You know, in a way, they should have got reparations, but now I'm thinking about it, it's probably good they didn't. Because that generation probably been happy if white people told them, well, you know, reparations is education. They probably like, oh, yeah, I can go to the college. That's my reparations. Or housing vouchers. That's reparations. They probably would have been happy. Well, yeah, that generation would have been happy with that. Let me stop and think. Because that's that white validation generation. Now, did all people do that? No. We're not saying all. But do you look at a group of people based on a few? Or you base it on the poll? I say look at it at the whole. That's it. The fact is that generation, white and black, has ruined America. Let's call it what it is. America's in shambles because of that generation. We're in debt. That generation has squandered off the manufacturing jobs. A lot of stores are closing because of the moves that generation has made, hyperinflation, because that generation is even still in power now. Look at Congress. It's geriatric. You know, like they were joking about Biden visiting angels. That's our Congress. It's visiting angels. It's not being ran by Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z. You still have that same generation in this country that don't even understand what AI is or anything else. You say your grandmother's family moved to Detroit and got paid. Yeah, that time period, if you went to Detroit, them good jobs you had at General Motors, oh yeah, them good factory jobs. Yeah. Oh yeah. And they shipped all the manufacturing jobs out. That's underneath that generation too. They shipped all the manufacturing jobs out. Like NAFTA. NAFTA was one of the most horrible things ever that happened to America. See that generation in the corporations at that time period. When they shipped all them jobs to China, they were being greedy. It's because the Chinese people was only making $1 to $2 per day to do the jobs instead of paying Americans. And instead of you saying, and raising hell about shipping your job off to China, what did the Chinese do? The Chinese, they were smart. They say, yeah, we third world right now, but you know what? We're going to copy all your schematics. We're going to copy everything that you teaching us how you making it. And then we're going to put a Chinese name on it and we're going to sell it cheaper. And that's how we're going to get better than you. And that's the Chinese model. The Chinese model is I don't have to create it, but I'll innovate it and put my name on it and sell it to you cheaper. And now the Chinese got some of the best things ever now. At one point in time, I remember it. You didn't want nothing from China. It was cheap, like dollar store cheap. You didn't want nothing that said it was made in China. Now, the top of the line things are made in China. Most everything is made in China. That's why if you got a Chinese plug on manufacturing, whatever, that's what it is now. Because you deal with people here. Listen, I'm telling black folk, if you in any kind of business selling something, you need to get a plug over there. Going through these Americans and all of that mess, you're gonna run your pockets. Find out who the manufacturer is, and in China, and go do it yourself. I respect how they did that. I really did. They didn't just like, we getting paid. No, they said, no. How do we look at what these white folks are doing, copy it, put our name on a Chinese name on it, and sell it cheaper to the world and get our own bag. I respect that hustle. I respect it. You say you got your Chinese portable fans? Okay, I got you. Now, you say we must stand strong and stay focused on our tangibles and reparations, but you still got some black people, unfortunately, that I was hearing them say it just the other day. Well, you see, we got Trump, and you still got black people talking about they want tangibles. We in an emergency. We can't just be dealing with tangibles. Oh, God. Oh, y'all starting this again. Haven't you learned? That's the Democrat shields will shield. They say, oh, we got Trump and this and that and the third, and okay, all right. Instead of telling the Democrats, hey, man, give us our tangibles and we'll be at the polls and reckon numbers for you. We'll be at the polls like Obama numbers. Give us our and like I keep saying this stuff about ICE and all this other stuff about these other groups. The Democrats aren't saying anything about that. They're not even saying much or nothing about even Trump doing what he's doing with Greenland. They let Trump do whatever he want to do. They're scared of him. That's why I'm gonna say that. They're scared of him. They probably scared of him because if he do some investigation on him, you're gonna find out all their dirt. That's why they don't. That's why most of the politicians don't say nothing to Trump, because he know if he investigate they behind and see what they have going on, it's gonna be a lot of dirt they gonna find. Because if your hands clean, you could talk, till the cows come home. You say, hey man, I don't do no evil things. I pay my taxes. I do nothing up with me. I live a pretty square life, so I can talk, but they know they all corrupt. Oh, here, okay, all right. Let me answer this. In the beginning of the stream, you can rewind it back. My 8937, I said that same statement. I said not all. Of course not all, right? Now, you said Pan-African sentiment was strong then. You said things happen as they supposed to happen. It would bring us to where we need to be. Yeah, but, it's like me just screwing up, for my children, and I'm just screwing up. And I'm like, well, things happen, and I could prevent it screwing up. I could have just continued the work. And then Pan-African sentiment, okay, I do remember all of that from the 80s and 90s. And basically what it was with Pan-African, they didn't say Pan-African. They didn't use that term. Back then, they would just have respect for Africa. They would say it was the motherland. Of course, during that time period, I remember about South Africa. Definitely in the 80s and definitely in the early 90s about the apartheid and all the evil that was going on. So most of our conversation in that time period that I remember was about South Africa and Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela was a big hero to a lot of people. He fought against, the apartheid government. He was riding away in Robben Island. And it's just crazy that I had the opportunity to go to the same jail cell and see where he stayed. And where a lot of black people, how they had them people basically in slavery over there on Robben Island. You know what I'm saying? It was just it's amazing how life turned out, right? Never in my life I thought I would go to South Africa at all, and then even go see that. So that's crazy. But outside of that, black people really didn't go to the continent of Africa that much, if at all, in that time. I think black people go to the continent of Africa more so now. Black folks live there more so now than back then. Black folks wasn't traveling out the country like that. They wasn't.
Do you have a photo that's just sitting there doing nothing? Let's make it move with CapCut's AI feature. All you have to do is select the video you want, scroll to the AI panel and click on AI video.
Black folks wasn't traveling out the country like that. They wasn't. Yeah, you say Mama Africa. Yeah, that was another term. People wear them big Africa medallions and Africa. I mean, a lot of Africa. And listen, ain't nobody got, listen, how some people feel about the African continent today, that is a recent thing. I'm just being honest with you. That's a recent thing. And a lot of it comes from online. I'll be honest with you. It comes from online. Or it comes from people addressing anti-Black American sentiments that come from some immigrants, not all, some immigrants. And I do believe that those sentiments, definitely need to be addressed. I've addressed them, and I have no problem addressing them. People got mad at me for addressing. Phil, you're supposed to be bringing us together. I'm supposed to be bringing the truth, not bringing you together. That's not my job. You bring yourself together. I'm supposed to tell you the truth, and the truth going to divide people between those who are for the truth or those who are against the truth. It's going to divide, and that's okay. Because if you can't stand on the side of righteousness and truth, then you need to get the hell on anyway. And if that's what it took for you to get the hell on, then beautiful. You need to. So listen, y'all need to understand, it is good for people to leave you. Certain people don't need to be around you anyway. Don't get so caught up on people leaving you. Trust me, if it's your time to go, it's your time to go. No matter who they are. Human beings could change too. They could flip on you. And if they gotta go, they gotta go. Do not cry about people leaving you. Sometimes God is protecting you by having them walk away from you. So if I say something and you don't like it, I don't like him no more. Okay, then that means it was time for you to go. Whether you're around me digitally or physically. It was time for you to go, and that's okay. I don't like him no more. He said this one thing I don't like. Okay. If that's what it took for you to go, then that was a blessing that I said it. Because you always had that in your heart anyway about me. Because saying one thing and you that pissed off, and you just like, clearly you had something against me. Clearly. And that was just the one thing that triggered you. Because if somebody for you, they not gonna get mad if you say something they disagree with. They're like, oh, I don't agree with that. That's it. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. I'm not, listen, I'm in my era where I value my time and I value my peace. I'm tell you that much. I'm in that era. And you're not gonna waste my time and you're not gonna disrupt my peace. No. All that bring a bone to carry a bone, worrying about things that you can't fix or change. Not doing it. Not in my personal life. Now, you could do it if you want, but I'm telling you from personal experience, all you're going to do is make yourself stressful. That's it. And Black folks got enough problems in this country that give you stress. So I'm definitely not going to create stress. Let me tell you something. Some people may say, well, oh, that's boring. Well, if chaos is interesting to you, please go live in chaos. I don't want chaos around me. I want predictability. I want planned fun. I want all that, right? Cool. But some fun could be not planned. That's fine. But chaos, chaotic people, drama-filled people, people that's always got something going on. No, if you disrupt my peace, me and you got to part ways. And I really mean that. 'Cause I am not getting no younger, and I'm not going to be disturbed. And that's one thing I can try to impart to us as Black people. Stay away from chaos and chaotic people. Yeah. Nikki, I see you down there. I see what you're saying. Hey, you know what? When I learned about that, when one goes, 2 or 3 more come. About what you said, Nikki. I learned that too. That's why I don't get caught up on that. If one person walks away, don't talk to me anymore, and that's happened, hey, I meet new people that say, hey, it was just your time to go get away from me. That's all. I'm not even upset about it. I'm not, because everybody has their time with you. Yeah, you don't do no toxic relationships, no matter what they are, whether they are your personal relationship with men and women, whether it's friends, family, no matter what, you don't do toxicity. It's no. Yeah, listen, staying home gives you a lot of peace because you can control the home. I'll give you that. I'll give you that. You know, people going out to drink, spending $17 to $20 for a drink. Man, you want to go drink, you can go to the liquor store and buy a bottle and drink at your house and chill and watch a movie if you're going to drink something. You ain't got to go out there to no bar and spend $17 a drink. That doesn't even make economic sense. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, anyway, thank you y'all for joining tonight, and make sure, I hope you learned something. We'll greatly appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe, and make sure you go check out LaSherica on AfroWire AI. You know, LaSherica gonna be doing her thing, and just stay tuned over there, and also make sure, Soraya, make sure you check out Soraya the songstress. I know we got music always with Soraya. We got something different we done over there. You know, check the post, you'll see, something different with Soraya coming. And make sure you subscribe and listen to the music. We dropping music all the time with Soraya. Good music too. Good music, and people are liking it from what, I've talked to people, face to face, let them hear the music or whatever. And so I think we got a good product with Soraya, but we can continue to build. We got a lot of songs in the tank we working on. All I already got done. Let me say that much. So make sure you follow Soraya the songstress on YouTube and TikTok and all that. All right, we'll catch.
If you've got kids in the UK under 16, you need to hear this. What would they do if your income suddenly stopped tomorrow? Because for most families, the answer is nothing. If something happened to you, an illness, an accident, the unexpected, would your partner be able to keep up with the mortgage, the bills, the school runs, the weekly shop? Most families couldn't. But right now, UK parents are locking in up to £300,000 in cover from just £10 a month. That's less than £1 a day. No medical exams, no home visits. You can be approved from day one, even with some health conditions. It only takes less than a minute to get started. So just click the button under my video right now and take the short assessment on the next page. You'll get your price today for your cover. Your family's worth it, and the peace of mind starts today. So tap below now to get started. Your family's future could depend on it.